There comes a moment in life when you realize that your constant availability has become your greatest weakness. The phone calls you answer instantly, the messages you reply to without hesitation, the favors you agree to at a moment's notice, they all weave an invisible thread that binds you to other people's needs while slowly strangling your own. At first, you believe that being available is a virtue. You think it makes you reliable, valuable, indispensable. But slowly you begin to see the truth. The more present you are for everyone, the less they notice you. The easier it is to reach you, the easier it is to forget you. And perhaps the cruelest part of all is that some people will take your endless availability not as a gift, but as something they are entitled to. Your time becomes their property, your energy their fuel, your silence their comfort, and you, the ever-present friend, colleague, or family member, fade into the background of your own life. But something changes when you decide to step back, when you allow silence to answer the calls, when you let the messages sit unread, when you choose your own company over the endless noise of others. It is in this quiet withdrawal that you start to hear the sound of your own voice again. And in that moment, you see it clearly. The ones who valued you only for what you gave them will drift away, but the ones who value you for who you are will come closer. This is the power of stepping back. It doesn't push the right people away, it draws them nearer. There comes a moment in life when the constant giving, the constant availability, the endless yes to everyone's demands begins to drain the very soul out of you. At first, you don't notice it because it's hidden beneath layers of politeness, duty, and the desire to be liked. You think you're being generous, supportive, a good friend, a good partner, a good colleague. You pick up the phone at midnight, you rearrange your schedule for someone else's emergency, you sacrifice your own rest, your own dreams, just to keep someone else comfortable. And yet, in the quiet hours when no one's looking, you start to feel it, the emptiness creeping in. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But how can you truly become yourself when your time, your energy, your life is constantly on loan to others? This is the trap so many fall into, the belief that love, friendship, and respect are earned only through constant self-sacrifice. The truth? The more endlessly available you are, the less people value you. Your kindness stops being seen as a gift and becomes something they simply expect. It's subtle at first. People stop saying thank you. They stop asking if you're busy before they request something. They assume you'll be there because you always are. And as this expectation grows, your identity begins to shrink. You are no longer you. You're just a resource, a means to an end. But here's the irony. When you finally start pulling away, when you dare to set boundaries, when you start to protect your own time, everything changes. People suddenly notice your absence. They remember your worth. Some will resent you for it. Others will quietly respect you more. And most importantly, you begin to respect yourself. This is not about becoming selfish. It's about understanding the psychology of human value. Jung believed that our unconscious mind sends us signals long before we consciously acknowledge them. That restless discomfort you feel when you give too much, that's your psyche warning you. It's saying if you keep this up, you will lose yourself entirely. The moment you stop being constantly available is the moment you step back into your own power. It's not an act of rejection. It's an act of self-preservation. And that's when the real transformation begins. At first, the change feels uncomfortable. You've been conditioned for years, maybe even decades, to believe that saying yes is the right thing to do, that being helpful is the mark of a good person. And to some extent, that's true. But there's a darker side to it. The quiet exploitation that happens when people realize you'll bend over backward for them without limits. Jung often spoke about the shadow, the parts of ourselves we don't want to acknowledge. For many overly available people, their shadow is resentment. Outwardly, you smile and nod, but inside, you're boiling. You don't want to admit it, but you're angry. Angry at the people who keep taking, and angry at yourself for letting them. This is the internal conflict that begins the journey. On one hand, you feel guilty for wanting to pull away. On the other, you're desperate for breathing room. You start small, maybe by not replying instantly to every message. Maybe by saying, I can't right now without offering an elaborate excuse. And you notice something fascinating. The world doesn't collapse. In fact, something else happens. People start adapting. They might be surprised at first, maybe even frustrated, but they adjust. The ones who truly value you will respect your time. The ones who are only using you will drift away. This is a painful but necessary filter. Jung would call this individuation, the process of becoming your true self, separate from the roles others have cast you in. It's not about abandoning your relationships. It's about stepping into them as a whole, self-respecting individual instead of a perpetual giver. When you first pull back, you may feel waves of fear, fear of being seen as rude, selfish, or unkind. But the deeper truth is you're teaching people how to treat you. Every time you set a boundary, you're sending a silent message. My time matters. My energy matters. I matter. And when you believe it, others start to believe it too. The real transformation begins when you realize just how much of your life you've been giving away unconsciously. It's not just about the hours you've spent helping others. It's about the mental space, the emotional labor, the constant background stress of being on call for the world. You've been carrying other people's priorities as if they were your own, and in doing so, you've been postponing your own growth. Jung would describe this as living in a state of unconscious compulsion, driven by patterns you don't even question. Maybe it comes from childhood, where you learn that being helpful earned you love and approval. Maybe it's from early jobs where you were rewarded for working late without complaint. Over time, these patterns solidify into identity. You stop asking, do I want to do this? And start assuming the answer is always yes. But here's the turning point. The day you consciously decide to put your own needs first is the day the unconscious becomes conscious. You begin to notice how often you say yes out of habit rather than desire. You see the toll it's taken, not just on your schedule, but on your sense of self. And then, a subtle but profound shift happens. You start making choices based on alignment, not obligation. You ask yourself, does this serve me, before committing? You realize that every yes to something unimportant is a no to something that could change your life. It's not about cutting people off. It's about cutting off the behaviors that drain you. And the more you do it, the more you notice something unexpected. Your creativity returns. Your energy rises. Your focus sharpens. Because finally, your life is no longer being hijacked by everyone else's demands. For Jung, this is where individuation deepens. By reclaiming your time, you reclaim your life. By reclaiming your life, you reclaim your selfhood. And that, more than constant availability, makes you truly valuable to the world. There is a moment most people rarely recognize, the moment when exhaustion is no longer just physical, but mental and emotional. Carl Jung described it as a signal that the soul is asking for space, space to breathe, space to heal, space to reconnect with the source of our inner strength. You may have felt it before. Every time your phone vibrates, a small wave of dread washes over you. Every incoming message carries a quiet sense of guilt if you don't respond immediately. Every request, no matter how small, feels like an extra weight on shoulders already heavy. At that point, your life is no longer moving at its natural rhythm. It's being dictated by someone else's demands, someone else's schedule, and someone else's expectations. And here's what's often forgotten. When you are always available, you are silently teaching others that you have no boundaries, that they can come to you at any time, ask for anything, and you will still be there. But the truth is, humans are not machines. There comes a moment when the body and mind decide to whisper or sometimes scream, enough. Jung believed that boundaries are the highest form of self-love. Because when we protect our energy, we're not only preserving ourselves, but ensuring that when we do show up for others, we are truly present, not just a body without a soul. Stopping the habit of always being ready does not mean you're selfish. On the contrary, it is the most honest way to care for yourself, so that when you give, it's real. The strange thing is, when you stop being constantly available, the world reacts. Some people will be confused, others will be offended, and a few will even try to guilt you back into the old version of yourself. The one who always said yes, the one who never paused, the one who kept giving until there was nothing left. But something else happens too. You start to notice who truly values you, the ones who respect your time, the ones who don't just reach out when they need something, but who check in simply to see how you are. The ones who understand that your absence isn't rejection, it's preservation. In that space you've reclaimed, your mind becomes clearer. Your energy starts to return. You begin to choose your commitments, not out of obligation, but out of genuine desire. And perhaps for the first time in years, you realize you are not missing out. You are finally living. Jung would argue that this shift is not only necessary but inevitable for anyone who wants to grow beyond the patterns that keep them small. Because the truth is, every no to others can be a yes to yourself. And that, in the long run, changes everything. There comes a point when you stop explaining yourself, not because you no longer care, but because you realize that those who truly understand you never needed the explanation in the first place. Jung once suggested that we do not owe every part of ourselves to everyone. In fact, the more you try to justify your feelings, your choices, your very being, the more you invite people to twist them. Silence becomes your greatest form of protection. When you are always available, always picking up the phone, always agreeing to meet, always making space, you unintentionally teach people that your time is cheap. They begin to see you not as a rare presence, but as an endless resource. And resources, they get used, drained, and forgotten. The moment you step back, something shifts. The people who valued you only for what you gave them disappear. The ones who value you for who you are step closer. Jung believed that relationships mirror the psyche. When you stop being constantly available, you allow a natural sorting to take place. Those who were with you for convenience fall away. Those who are aligned with your soul remain. It's not an act of cruelty, it's an act of self-respect. And self-respect is magnetic. When you stop chasing everyone else's needs, you finally have space for your own. You remember the hobbies you abandoned, the quiet moments you missed, the dreams you postponed. And strangely, as you pour into yourself, you become more valuable. Not because you're harder to reach, but because you radiate something rare in this noisy world: self-possession. There is a peculiar thing that happens when you create boundaries: resistance. People will accuse you of changing. They will tell you that you're distant, selfish, or cold. This is not a sign that you are wrong. It is a sign that your absence is being felt. Jung noted that the human mind resists change not because it fears the new, but because it fears losing the old patterns it relied upon. When you are always available, people build habits around your accessibility. Break that pattern and you break their comfort. But you are not responsible for maintaining someone else's comfort at the expense of your own life force. The resistance you encounter is not always malicious. Sometimes it's simply the friction of recalibration. But this is where many people retreat. They step back into availability because it feels easier than facing temporary discomfort. Yet those who hold their ground discover something profound. The people who remain are those who are willing to adapt with you. It's in this stage that you begin to see your own worth more clearly. You realize that your time is not a commodity, it's a currency. And if you spend it freely on everyone, you will have nothing left for what truly matters. The shift is not about arrogance. It's about stewardship of your own life. Once you are no longer a constant presence, your relationships undergo a silent transformation. Conversations become more intentional. Invitations feel more genuine. People stop assuming they can have your time whenever they want and start appreciating it when they do. This scarcity isn't manipulation, it's the natural rhythm of healthy human interaction. Jung understood that distance can create depth. Just as night gives meaning to day, absence gives weight to presence. When you are not always there, your return feels like an event. People listen more closely. They value the words you choose. And strangely, those who once took you for granted begin to remember what they could lose. This is not just about others, it's about you too. You begin to see who in your life truly fuels you and who only drains you. You start to choose your circles with the same care an artist chooses colors. The painting of your life becomes more intentional, less cluttered. And in that clarity you find joy. What you learn is simple yet difficult for many to accept. You do not need to be everywhere, for everyone, all the time. In fact, your power lies in being precisely where you choose to be. There will be moments of doubt, days where you wonder if you've pulled away too much, if you've lost opportunities, if you've become invisible. Jung would say that these doubts are simply the shadow speaking. The part of you that fears rejection and longs for approval. But remember, you are not withdrawing from life. You are re-entering it on your own terms. You are not invisible. You are focused. And focus makes you formidable. When you stop being constantly available, something paradoxical happens. The right opportunities find you more often, because now your life has space for them. You're no longer drowning in trivial obligations. You have energy for the meaningful. And as you lean into this way of living, you realize the people and projects that truly matter are not threatened by your boundaries. They are strengthened by them. In the end, this isn't about playing hard to get or engineering scarcity. It's about reclaiming the most finite resource you have, your time. It's about aligning with Jung's belief that individuation, the process of becoming your true self, requires both connection and solitude. When you stop being available for everything, you become available for the right things. You stop scattering your energy into 1,000 tiny fragments and start channeling it into what aligns with your deepest values. And perhaps most importantly, you discover that the people who truly love you never needed you to be constantly available. They just needed you to be real. So step back, protect your space, and watch how everything changes. Not because the world suddenly becomes different, but because you have.